Hey everybody, and welcome to Death By, where contestants will earn reps for their arguments or fear elimination. I'm your host, Lauren Khalil. Whoever I decide has the best argument through the final round will stand on top of the podium and earn 30 seconds to talk about a topic of their choosing. On today's episode, we have two-time Affiliate Cup champion and seminar staff head trainer James Hobart, CrossFit Games reporter Nikki Brazier with Kettlebells and Cocktails, affiliate owner and CrossFit analyst Chase Ingram with Get With The Programming, Tim Paulson with Team CrossFit East Nashville Proven champion. We'll see if he can hang on to that. Let's play Death By. CrossFit recently sent out the latest edition of their Hopper email, and in it included details about semifinal scheduling, supplements, and a new 2 appeals rule that CrossFit Games is implementing during this year's semifinals and games. What are your initial thoughts? Start with 30 seconds on the clock. James, we're going to let you begin.
Oh, I didn't see that coming. Is my timer going? Is this thing on?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I have so many questions this one. 2 appeals rule. How many appeals are teams actually making? I generally like the rule because I think it might limit teams from making erroneous appeals. Also, I personally feel like you should only be able to appeal if you're the team that's in last or finished in the top 3 in that heat. That's all I have to say on that one. I got a point.
You got a point. Chase, let's turn it over to you.
You didn't tell me I was going to go first. That wasn't fair.
I think 2 is very generous for this new season. I would prefer 1. I mean, you think about the semifinals have 60 individuals in the number of teams versus the 30. I mean, you could have upwards to almost 200 appeals in a competition, however rare they may be. But I think 1 would be a much better option. And then if you appeal and successfully, you get another one. If not, you're done for the competition. So give them 1. They're being way too nice with 2.
Ooh, Tim, as an athlete, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I've probably done 25 high-level competitions in my career, and I've probably appealed twice in the last 10 years. So I do think it's generous as well. To me, this feels like a catch-all rule where somebody sometime appealed like 5 times throughout the course of the CrossFit Games, and they're like, we can't have this anymore. So I feel like this is probably like a catch-all clause to try and eliminate those people. I don't think this is necessarily for everybody.
Nikki, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't mind it on the basis that I really feel like it was put in place to encourage the proper types of appeals, because the rule also states that the first thing to note for the athletes is that on-field judgment calls are final. So when a judge says, hey, that's a no rep, you can't argue in that moment. And I do feel like our judges on the competition floor have the best view, and it gives them a little bit more power and it saves them a little bit. So I don't mind it because it's encouraging the right kinds of appeals when necessary.
So at the end of round 1, we have Chase Ingram leading the way with 2 points, followed by a 3-way tie with Tim, Nikki, and James. James, don't worry. This time I'm going to let you end the round. We'll see if that helps you out a bit. On to round number 2. Well, when it comes to the new 2 appeals rule, CrossFit outlined whether an athlete can appeal and some details on what exactly would be outlined under those details. It states that most range of motion movements, such as squat depth, extension of hips, knees, or arms, and stabilization of a lift or equipment overhead, cannot be included. But should they be? Now we have 45 seconds on the clock. Nikki, let's start with you.
Man, I unfortunately have more questions than answers because I don't really understand what the most is in there for. It's kind of either range of motion movements like are appealable or they're not. So the most I don't really understand, is it like one movement over another is or isn't appealable, or is it like in a certain scenario that movement is appealable but not in others? At the end of the day, I feel like it's on the athletes to know how to move well and to leave no question for the judges. So if something is skirting the line, like I understand why that should be an unappealable situation, but I'm a little bit confused around the parameters of this rule, and I think it should be clearer if it is in fact going to drive this 2 appeal standard.
Tim, what are your thoughts surrounding having 2 appeals and this whole depth, range of motion, etc.?
I mean, as a good mover, I've had some bad judges over the years, and I have kind of known that some things are good when they've been getting called not, and it's been really frustrating. So I think you're opening a can of worms if you allow range of motion appeals, but if you limit people to 2 appeals, there's enough video review in the space, there's enough camera angles, like things could easily have, like CrossFit could easily have video review. Most professional sports do, and I think maybe at some point, looking to further professionalize the sport, it might be something that we need to be able to look into, especially when it's simple things like stabilization of a lift or, you know, things like that, where one little bad judgment call can actually cost you an entire event. So I'm actually in favor of allowing range of motion appeals.
Interesting. Chase, what are your thoughts on that?
Totally off base. I'm just kidding, Tim. Range of motion is, to me, like the appealing balls and strikes in baseball or holding calls in the NFL. Like those things, it brings more problems to the table than I think solves. So I think just making sure that the judges are more vigilant in keeping those standards is a priority. The one thing I would like to see revisited is this lockout thing, because does that pertain on all lockouts or say a heavy lift, in which I think it should be appealed if you are doing a clean and jerk overhead for a max lift and trying to stabilize that overhead and there is no clear lockout, or maybe saying go beyond your time frame for a snatch. Those kind of things should be reviewable when it comes to the lockout part of this clause. But as far as depth, range of motion, those kind of things, that's balls and strikes to me. So those shouldn't really be on the table.
Oh man, very good point, Chase. But you did lose a point because you went over our shot clock.
There's no shot clock
in the top corner of the
There's
screen.
a shot clock on the screen. No, there is no one.
James, let's go to you. We know that you are a fantastic mover, but what does this mean for everybody else? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think similarly to Tim, I haven't had a lot of, I got 45 seconds for this. I haven't had a lot of no reps in my competitive career, but I do think there is room to review range of motion, especially in the case that we do it in other parts of the season. And we at least give out penalties for lack of range of motion and no reps in other parts of the season. So I think with this 2 appeals rule, it limits the amount of appeals. So you could have athletes appealing range of motion. I think that's really important. Even though it is on the athlete to always move as best as possible, they are competing. We're not saying they have to go to the maximum range of motion. We are only saying minimum. So it's expected that they are going to skirt the line sometimes. And I think where bad calls are made, they should be able to appeal that. So.
And at the end of round number 2, we have a 3-way tie. Tim, Chase, and Nikki. James, unfortunately, with only 2 points, you are eliminated. It was your first game. Maybe better luck next time.
Savage, Lauren.
Moving on to round number 3. With individual and team semifinals, they're just a month away now. We're all anxiously waiting to see what new standardized programming is going to look like. If you were the programmer and putting in a benchmark workout, which one would it be and why? 1 minute on the clock. Tim, as an athlete competing, what do you want to see?
So I actually think that a lot of like the classic benchmarks, like the girl workouts, are fantastic training tools. They're good for our affiliates, but they're a little bit outdated. Most of them, I'm making a generalization here, for the competitive CrossFitter and the competitive landscape, because you're inviting range of motion issues and people trying to race things that just get a little too chaotic, if you ask me. So if I had to pick a workout, it would actually be a hero workout. There's a lot of meaning behind them. I think they're fantastic workouts to do, and generally they're a little bit longer, a little bit higher volume, so there's a little bit more components to race. So the one that I would pick is Daniel. It's actually a kind of Fran-esque workout with some, it's like a 400 run or 50 pull up, 400 run, some thrusters, an 800 run, and then it kind of goes back down. but it has like a longer Fran feel. And I think that it would be a really great race, high gymnastics capacity, high conditioning capacity. So I think that would be super cool. I don't really want to do it particularly, but I think it would be a great race and a great test.
Chase, as somebody who's done a ton of programming, what would you like to see when it comes to a benchmark?
Well, I think Daniel's a great choice. That was good. Good by Tim. I think there's my shot clock. My face was covering it. 100%. Like classic girl benchmarks have no place, I think, as they're written in the competitive landscape that we have, as Tim was alluding to, because Fran is now a measure of like the size of the athlete versus the fitness. And one thing I would really like to see, if you want to keep it more classic CrossFit girl style, Gwen. I think Gwen is a really sneaky test that you don't need to change. It's 15, 12, 9, unbroken sets of clean and jerks, which we've tested a thruster and a clean and jerk already for multiple reps. But the kicker is you choose the weight and must keep the weight for all those sets. And here's the tiebreaker.
I like it.
The time it takes to complete all 3 sets for that event. Get the girls out, get the hero workouts out, save those for the CrossFit Games. Gwen is your test for semifinals.
No. Oh my God. I also know Gwen.
Oh,
No points for Gryffindor.
Nikki.
0 points for Gryffindor.
Nikki,
Wait, I have a spin. I have a spin.
You. Okay.
I
Nikki, let's see
also
if we can earn you
love
some
the
points
idea.
here.
Yeah. Okay. Whew, man, this is rough. But I also wrote Gwen. I love the 15, 12, 9. I love, just from a spectator perspective, like a really fast grip it and rip it workout, just to see who can hang on the longest. It makes for a really fun spectacle. There's always like an awesome foot race at the end. And I think you could do it 2 ways. I think you could set a weight that is moderate or difficult for the elite athletes at that level, or you can go with the classic Gwen, which is allowing them to choose their own weight. And then you could do something along the lines of scoring based off of the weight that they're lifting. So like, let's just say you did 95. So every rep you complete at 95 is 95 points. And so the heavier you go, the greater of a chance you have at completing those reps. But remember, Gwen is touch and go. A set of 15, a set of 12, and a set of 9. So if you break that up, effectively all of those reps that you've done and all those points that you've accumulated are no longer valid, and you have to start that set over again. So I feel like there could be a fun way of bringing some strategy into it, as well as just a really fast-paced fun event.
Oh man! What are the
sorry,
odds
Nikki.
that both of you
Sorry.
picked the same.
I didn't know that's what you had.
Great minds. Great minds.
Great minds. At the end of this round, we have Chase leading the way with 7 points. Right behind him is Tim. And then unfortunately, Nikki with 5 points. You are our next contestant to be eliminated. To topic 4. Speaking of semifinals, some of the regions like North America, East, and Europe are absolutely stacked, with men and women combined. Which not top 10 athlete will make the biggest statement at semis? Chase, 1 minute on the clock. Will let you begin.
Okay, I'm going to draw your attention to the North America West. Go to the men's division and scroll all the way down to 31st place, where a man named William Leahy is sitting in 31st place, also known as Bill Leahy, who is sitting in 31st place only because of a major penalty he got during test 4 in the VIEP GHD sit-up. Otherwise, he was 10th, 12th, 7th, and 5th, with an average of 8.5 between those 4. If you averaged it out one more with that penalty, which actually he placed better in, he was in the top position, he would be 3rd overall in this semifinal just without that penalty. So Bill Leahy, who demoed events for the games last year, is going to be my guy to get on top the leaderboard and the podium at the North America West.
Ooh, that was a really good pick, Chase. Tim, who do you have?
I've got 2. I'm going to go female side, though, over in Europe. Emma McQuaid's sitting in like 24th or 25th over in Europe right now. I'm not sure if she got a penalty in quarterfinals or something that may have knocked her down, but she's been, frankly, phenomenally impressive the last couple of years. Just kind of, her offseason performances have been great. Her performances at the games have been really good. And I have a soft spot in my heart for Irish athletes as well. So I think she's going to make a big splash over in Europe, potentially push for a podium spot at that really stacked semifinal. And then my second shout out will go to Sam Quant. He's not that far outside of the top 10. He's sitting in the mid-teens somewhere. But again, another guy sneakily into fourth place at the games last year. No one really talked about him much until all of a sudden he was kind of just off the podium behind the three kind of horses that were leading the way. So I would say if I had to pick one, Emma McQuaid, though, is definitely going to be the kind of dark horse to sneak from lower down that quarterfinal leaderboard and take a podium spot.
Ooh, I like all of those athletes. At the
Good
end
picks.
of this round, we have Chase still in the lead with 9 points. Tim right behind him. We are now entering the fifth and final round for all the marbles. Is Tim going to be a two-time champion, or is Chase going to steal away the crown?
Can only be one red
Let's
beard.
find out.
It's like Highlander. The battle of the redheaded children.
With Ricky Garard recently injuring himself in his mountain biking accident, it raises questions of whether athletes should be participating in other sports during the season. But he's not the only high-level athlete doing this. We have Laura Horvath, Yona Koski, just to name a few. They're big into snowboarding, and several athletes participate in other sports as well. So do we love it or do we hate it? Chase, I'm going to let you start this one. 1 minute
Okay.
on the clock.
I feel like this is an unfair answer. As a coach, watching my athlete do these things, I hate it. And it's like our focus is the games. And when you look at what happened to Ricky Garard, obviously he separated his shoulder mountain biking. From the athlete perspective, look, Rich pioneered this, right? This is what made Rich rich. He was an athlete. He took a hockey stick to the face before the CrossFit Games and got stitches in. But you go to the opposite side of the spectrum and you saw what Matt Fraser did. Like, he wouldn't even cut his own food when he was nervous about cutting his hands. So sometimes you got to look at the athlete, and it's what makes them a competitor is doing these things within the sport. The other side, if you look at CrossFit in itself and the theoretical hierarchy of an athletic development, sport is at the very top of our pyramid when we look at and define CrossFit. So there is part of that is unique to our DNA as CrossFit athletes, that playing other sports is part of being a great CrossFit athlete.
Tim, you are an athlete. Are you playing other sports right now? And what is your take on this? Love it or hate it?
I like to golf all season. So because we only get warm months during CrossFit Games training, so I'll be doing that. But I think it's actually honestly more important as the season goes along, because you have to obviously weigh the risks and benefits and things like that, because obviously you don't want to do something stupid that takes you out for your season. Who each person is, obviously what fills their cup is very important as an athlete, because you need to keep yourself happy. But at the end of the day, the further you get along the season, the more those out of the gym skills actually really start to matter, because you get to the games, you see these things like mountain biking, you see these odd object events, you see these athletic events. So being able to express your fitness outside of the gym has a really high priority once you get to the games. So I think there's a lot of room for athletes to be safely pushing the boundaries of what they do outside of the gym, because at the games, it's probably going to pay off for them. I mean, you look at a guy like Ricky, he did really well in bike events, and that's because he loves mountain biking and spent a lot of time doing it. So a little bit of both, risk reward.
Risk reward. It all depends. And especially with some unknown variables with Boz's programming this year, we might see it paying off, or some people might get hurt trying. At the end of round 5, the final round, Tim, you were so close to wearing that crown again, ending with 10 points. But Chase is our champion, moving to the podium pedestal.
Yes.
How does victory feel, Chase?
Oh, it feels better than last time. I'll tell you what. I'm so mad at myself for losing a point earlier too, because on this screen I have like my little self, and it was covering the clock. So that's a user error. I should have known better. But if
all right,
yes,
30 seconds on the
I feel
clock.
redeemed. All right, 30
Here you
seconds
go,
on the
your
clock to
podium
talk
pedestal.
about whatever I want. Go to semifinals. Fans, If you guys want to watch the best athletes in the world compete against each other and you can't make it to Madison, go to your semifinal event. We've got super semis in North America. We've got super semis in Europe. And the semifinals in our other 4 are just getting better and better and better. The environments that you have in South America and Oceania are wild. And to grow the sport more in Africa and Asia, I think is vital. So sign up, get a ticket, and go watch your favorite athletes compete and qualify for the CrossFit Games.
Oh, I love that, Chase. It's music to all of our ears. It's going to be like a mini CrossFit Games. Get your tickets now, and you'll see some of us there, I'm sure. Tim will be competing. We'll be working in some capacity. It's going to be a good time for everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us on another episode of Death by James. I'm sorry, man. This was the first one to be eliminated. We will have
just a big no rep.
Guests. That could have been James's first ever no rep.
My second.
Well, I feel pretty excited that I was the one that gave it to you. James, Nikki, Chase, Tim, thank you guys so much for being contestants on the show. Chase is our winner for our 3rd episode of Death By. Make sure you guys follow us on YouTube. Go ahead and check out all of our studio shows and our weekly episodes of Death By. You also can get exclusive content if you become a fan on Patreon, and follow us on Instagram. Until next time, from all of us here at Talking Elite Fitness, I'm Lauren Khalil, and we'll see you again soon.